The following program was made possible thanks to the generous support of our Kickstarter backers.
Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired.
Sup, Holmes?
Beware! Your host, Jonathan Holmes!
And we're back! Thank you so much for sticking with us. I had an emergency last weekend. A beloved family member fainted. I was in a car driving them and my baby at the same time to an emergency room. It was total chaos. It was 8 hours of nightmare fun. And now I'm back with Danny and Jack. Couldn't be happier. No more nightmare. Nothing but love for Danny and Jack. Makers of Poncho?
Hello.
Is it true? Is that what does your shirt say, Danny?
Oh, Poncho developer. That's what I usually wear to expos and things.
How many shirts are there in the world that say Poncho developer?
3. Well, there's only 3 of us, so.
That were they expensive to make? 3 shirts only, or did you make them yourselves, like how you made the game
No,
yourself?
I just did it for a t-shirt printing website.
Ah, gotcha.
We
I'll
did
remember
something,
that.
so we'd go to like EGX or PAX, whatever, and people would see a t-shirt and be like, oh, okay, I know who those guys are.
It is in this ever more crowded video game development world. It's
Yeah.
important to identify who you are and create your own identity, which you've done with Poncho. Though people have accused Poncho of being too similar to Fez.
Yes.
How do you respond to those criticisms?
I'll take it as a compliment, really. When me and Jack were designing the game, we were thinking more along the lines of old school Sega games crossed with maybe like Braid or Cave Story. But like the whole mechanic is probably what I mean. Obviously, it's a pixel art platformer, so it's going to get that comparison. But like the whole plane shifting mechanic, where you can move into foregrounds and backgrounds, and Fez has got its own 3D mechanic where you twist the world. Like we were never thinking of Fez when we were designing it. It's just something that seemed to happen as it evolved, I guess.
Uh-oh, I gotta change the post. I wrote that it was Fez inspired. I'm gonna change it
Oh.
in real time right now. A, in brackets, not Fez inspired, and save and continue. If you don't believe me, you can check the post later, fellas.
That's okay.
So Fez was not an inspiration. It was a coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just more inspired by, like, I guess, me and Jack used to play a lot of the same games, so things like Golden Axe or any kind of side-scrolling Sega game. And when we first came to design the game, like, we had a discussion about what the mechanic would be. And we were talking about how, you go in this old-school game, you go left to right, and then you've got the parallax backgrounds behind you. Got like, usually hills and then mountains. And I remember thinking, like, you could those things were there, but you can never actually go there and explore. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you could just press a button and then you're back in that area to explore? So that's kind of where the game came from, I guess.
Huh, and when was that? When were you first devising the central mechanic to Poncho?
Oh God, 3.5 years ago.
Oh, good grief.
It's been in development for quite a while. So
Yeah.
another similarity to Fez, I guess.
Sure. But it doesn't, like you're saying, Fez, I think, was announced in like 2008 or something, and then eventually came out.
Yeah.
Or was it 2000?
2012, I want to say it came out.
Something like that. Yeah. And Fez, of course, rotating world, Poncho, in and out of the foreground and background.
Yeah.
So quite clearly different right on the surface, yet the comparisons happen. Why do you think the comparisons continue to happen, even though the central mechanic, even though you are playing with dimensions, you
Yeah.
play them in a very different way?
I think it's the fact that it's doing a 2D, 3D mechanic. Also the fact it's pixel art, and then the fact it's called Poncho. It's an item of red clothing that he wears, even though it has nothing to do with the game. He just wears a poncho, and that's the robot's name. Like, it's got nothing else to do with the game. We just thought it
And
was a
is
cool
there
name.
violence in Poncho?
Not at all.
No, and Fez also relatively non-violent.
Yeah, I mean it's post-apocalyptic, and like a lot of the characters in the game are a bit depressing at times or philosophical. I don't know, but like there's no combat or anything, no jumping on things' heads or anything like that.
And was that a decision you made because you felt that violence wouldn't fit the overall story, or was it that gameplay-wise you weren't interested?
It didn't make sense in the story. Like I wanted it to be like I wanted the robots to kind of because it's all robots. There's nothing left alive because it's post-apocalyptic. Humanity's extinct, etc. And it's like a few hundred years later, and the robots are all trying to find a purpose in life. So they're not really against each other in any way. And also, like I did feel more inspired by Braid, and that does have enemies, but the enemies are usually used in like a puzzle basis. You have to jump on one enemy to reach that ledge to get the key or whatever. So I really wanted it to be just more about frustrating puzzles and some Twitch platforming thrown in there, rather than you get killed because some enemy threw a spanner at you or something. I don't know.
Sure. So there is you can die in Poncho.
You can, but it is infinite lives. So the game would be horribly frustrating if that wasn't the case, because you die a lot. It's already quite difficult in areas.
People often think, well, if there's no enemies, then that means that there won't be a ton of challenge or a ton of adversarial feeling towards you in the game. But the world of Poncho is a treacherous place.
Yeah, so the difficulty all comes from the level design itself. So I remember thinking, certainly when designing the harder levels, like, is this as difficult as Super Meat Boy? I don't know if I've got there yet. I'll make it a bit harder, And it was fun taking the game to like expos and stuff, to seeing people. It was like the beginning of the game, but we threw in one of the later levels just to see how people would tackle it. And there's so many times people just looked at the level, put the controller down, and walked away.
So since then, have you had to dial back the difficulty a little bit, or did you have it arc in a different
there's
way?
been like balancing and stuff, but mostly we want to keep it relatively hard in areas. I mean, it's not all hard, because you can go. It's open world, so you drop in the middle and you can go left or right in each area. So you can get through the game and miss almost half the game in a way. Depending on how you play, it's a bit kind of, we tried to give the players as much freedom as possible. But there are hard ways to complete areas and more easy ways if you can find them. But we wanted to give that feeling of satisfaction, like, oh, I finally did it. Kind of, when they actually beat something, rather than, okay, that's that, what's next on the list of things to do in this game.
Sure. Fez didn't have a ton in the way of abilities that you gained. You, of course, gained the Fez in the beginning, which allows you to rotate the world. And then from there, some have criticized the game for being a little bit too flat in terms of the experience it offers. It's just kind of like more platforming, variations on the theme. Whereas Super Meat Boy got through that by adding extra playable characters who had different abilities, while Meat Boy always kind of remained the same. How did you tackle that with Poncho? How did you work towards making sure it doesn't seem too flat in terms of the experience it offers?
Well, there are two unlockable abilities in the game. So there's one that lets you fix other robots that are broken, and you can help out this character called the Junkyard King, who's trying to assemble his army of minions for some reason. And if you unlock that ability, you can go around saving them, and it's like another collectible you can get. And there's also like a ground pound ability that lets you break rocks to find new collectibles, or like break rocks to find secret caves and things like that. And you can play for the whole game without either of those abilities. It's pretty much up to you if you want to explore and try to get everything. But a lot of we've really just tried to juice the main mechanic as much as possible. So we've got the basic shifting between 3 planes. You can go behind stuff and around stuff, but then later on, you've got 6 planes, and then you've got planes that move like this by themselves, and then you've got planes that move out, like the actual level moves in and out, and there's a bunch of other stuff as well. So we've tried to mix it up as much as possible and make sure the level design is fresh all the time. We haven't heard any bad things about the game, other than that it's hard at times.
Well, that's good to hear. Another developer who does the in and out of planes thing a good amount is Renegade Kid. I don't know if you've played any of their games, Mutant Muds and
we heard of Mutant Muds.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Different than your game in that you've got a gun, and you also have a jetpack, and you scoot along, and you go in and out of the background sometimes, but it's not like the central mechanic of it.
It's like you can only, I think in that game you can shift into the back, like when you're standing on a particular block or something.
That's right.
Like there's an up arrow, and you can shift back. Whereas in Poncho, you can shift anywhere, so it's up to you how you want to explore, I guess.
Right.
A lot of the games about that, like you know, we try to design every puzzle and every bit of every area with like different ways to get past it, and you know, there's just a lot of different ways of doing things.
So was it like designing its own game, or it's at least its own level design? Every time you had to do a background layer, and if that layer is traversable at all times, you had to make that layer work with whatever the player might be doing in the layer ahead of them, or the layer yet behind that. So it sounds like a lot of work. Sounds hard.
Yeah, it is. The level design is probably the thing that took the longest in the game to deal with, because you know, you'll have an idea, oh, that could be cool if the player, you know, had to deal with that, and you know, you make it and you realize, oh, but then if they shift there, they'll get stuck inside a wall. I have to redo that bit and figure out a different way of doing it. But yeah, the game's pretty robust now, and it feels really good. Everything makes sense. I don't know. I'm quite proud of it anyway.
Awesome. It makes me pretty darn excited. Has it been hard to start the game? Sounds like about 3.5 years ago, and watch other games come out that might have had elements of what you were planning on doing. I don't know if it made you feel like they were stealing your thunder, or it was like, people are going to think we ripped them off now, as we worked a little bit about. How has that experience been?
Well, I mean, the main game, I guess, that touches upon it is Mutant Mudds. But like, I think Mutant Mudds, the first one was out before, like, it was out like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember, but like, that is different enough that it doesn't really, I don't mind so much. And a lot of these games, you know, people make these comparisons, and I take them as compliments because I respect the developers and the games they've made. So that just makes me think, oh, they really see us on that kind of level. That's pretty cool. It's weird because we're just like 3 guys who've made the game at home. It's taken us a while, but like, you know, and to see it being worldwide and releasing all these platforms soon, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, it's so exciting with Rising Star, and it's coming to, if I remember correctly, Steam, PS4, Vita, and Wii U.
Yes, those are the platforms we've got at the moment.
That's a lot of platforms.
Yeah.
And you've been doing that porting work yourself?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we use the Unity engine.
Sure.
So the porting process is there's still a lot of work, but it's a lot easier because a lot of the stuff is taken care of in the engine itself. So it's doable with one guy. It just takes a bit longer.
Yeah, it's still not as easy as flipping a switch, from what I'm told, and of course certification and all of these other things. It can take a long time. Jack, what did you do, Jack? I want to make sure that you got involved.
Hello.
Jack, you did the music for the game, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And you know, I guess I oversee a lot of the design stuff, but yeah, mainly it's just audio and music for me.
Huh. And when you say oversee the design stuff, does that mean that Danny might design something, and then you would watch him over his shoulder and be like, not good enough. Back to the drawing board, Danny.
Yeah, he's very good at you know, because I'll make something and I'll work at it, and I'd overwork myself a lot and get burnt out and not know what I'm looking at anymore. And he'd always be there to kind of go, no, you have to scrap this entirely. It's horrible.
Whoa, that's Jack. How did you get that position? It's not often that you hear the sound designer, music composer is also kind of like
He's also the co-designer, like, of the main game. Like, it was him that designed the original characters before we brought on an artist. Like, the whole game started, like, I guess Jack can say, like, when you drew the pixel art character.
Yeah, so we'd made a couple of crappy iPhone games before. We were ready to make something new and something bigger. So, you know, we were just scribbling ideas, and I drew a little robot in a poncho it had a backpack back then, and Dan just jumped all over it. He was really excited.
Yeah, I remember I think I was jumping. I was in the living room, and I looked. He sent me the image, and I looked at it on my iPad, and I was telling my girlfriend, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's cool. I don't know what game we're gonna make, but it's gonna be about this guy." And then we had to figure out what we're gonna do.
Sure. Well, wow. So the kind of passion between you two, with Jack putting out the idea and Danny being so enthusiastic. It doesn't sound like Jack. It doesn't sound like you drew the robot in the poncho and said, "I'm a genius. This is what I'm going to spend the next 4 years on. Done. You're welcome, everybody." It doesn't
We
sound
didn't
like
think
you
it
were
was
quite
going to
as
be
impressed.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
It ended up. That's because we're perfectionists. Like, you know, the game's done when it's done. We thought, yeah, we'll do it in like a year and a half, maybe 2 years if we're slow.
Sure.
It took a lot longer.
Yeah, it often does. But Jack, were you super excited about the character you came up with right away, or was it Danny's enthusiasm that got you through this whole thing?
I mean, Dan's enthusiasm has always been, I don't know, he gets you going, because I'm usually quite drab and down a lot of the time. But no, I was excited. I was just excited to make a new game anyway. And
Sure.
I don't know, we were just playing around with ideas, and we just sort of fell into it. Really, wasn't like calculated or anything. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was exciting developing it from the very beginning to the end, because it was just a spur of the moment sort of thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's very hard to keep that spur of the moment inspiration, that honeymoon period alive for game development for a long time. I have to guess that you two have known each other for a little bit, and you have some creative.
Yeah.
chemistry that you-
We've known each other since school. I don't know, we were kind of acquaintances at school, but it wasn't until like the last year or so that we realized we both like the same games. He wants to work in video game music. I want to be a game designer / coder. And, you know, just kind of all fit together. Like, we can do indie games together. We've got the resources.
And how long ago was that?
Oh, God. I guess I want to say 7 years ago.
Oh, wow. All right. So
Yeah.
still in school, high school or college?
High school.
Awesome. So at the end of high school, coming into your own as adults, and you're like, what are we going to do after we don't just
Yeah.
go to high school anymore and we're going to be grown up? We're going to team up and make video games. What was the first game you made?
Ah. Well, we were both still learning the trade. I mean, Jack's stuff was always good. He's always been good at doing music, but I was still sort of learning, and I thought I'd do iPhone games because that seems to be at the time it was the easiest platform to get into because there wasn't a Steam Greenlight or anything like that.
Sure.
And we made a game called Epic Beard, which was a little arcade game where a giant bearded Viking head chases a little jelly around, and you've got to survive and get a high score. We tried to make it simple. We just made it really fun and stupid, just as like a test to see what we could do in like a month. And it was awful. It was so bad. I've
What
taken
don't
it
you
off
like
the App
about
Store
Epic
since.
Beard? It's hard for me to believe it's that bad.
The name, I like the name. That's the only thing I like about it.
It's a very nice name, and you're a little jelly.
Yeah, you're a little red jelly. He's got like a frightened expression on his face, and he's just being attacked by this godly Viking head for no reason. We just made it totally random. Like, he fires out cakes and bananas and poop, and like I don't know.
I'm waiting for the bad part. I'm waiting for you to like sell me on how bad it is, and I'm still thinking it's good.
It was just low production value, I guess. Like, I did all the art myself, which is like programmer art, and it didn't look good. I don't know. Maybe if we'd hired an artist, it would have looked okay, but we didn't have any money at the time, so.
Sure. And how did the game sell, Epic Beard?
Oh god, I remember I put it up, and I put it up the lowest price point, which is 99 cents, and I think on the first day it sold 6 or 7 copies.
All right.
Yeah, because
$7.
that's a pint.
But for the experience of having taken a project from inspiration to fruition to completion to putting it on a store, pretty neat. I mean, if you're going to learn on the job, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, it was a learning experience. I think that's mainly what I took from it, like what to do and what not to do again.
And was the what not to do? Do you feel like that was just as inspiring?
Don't do the art
as-
myself.
when I talk to a lot of people on the show, I'm very lucky to get to do that. And one of the questions I'm always that always pops in my head, I'm always curious about how some people will have a quotes failure unquotes, and it'll cause them to think, well, I'm going to go do something else. I'm bad at that. Other people have failures, and they for whatever reason, try even harder than they did before. They look at their failures as a challenge to overcome and to do better the next time.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's how you approached it. Is that how you'll feel, both of you, Jack and Danny? What if Poncho sells 7 copies total? Will you be tempted at that point to throw in the towel, or were you thinking?
I think I'd have to take a break at least. We've put all our money and time. Like, we haven't had a life for like 3 years because of this thing, because we've wanted to work so hard on it. And if, after trying, as hard as we could to do something like this, if that doesn't work, then it's like it'll really put a dent in us wanting to do something else, I guess. We'll have to go get a job at a company or something.
Sure. Do you feel the same way, Jack?
I guess in the short term, I agree with Dan.
It would, like I said, a break, not like I'm quitting forever.
Yeah, I think me and Dan, we both have too much of a passion for video games and making video games to quit entirely. For the first few years of Poncho, it was all part-time whilst we were working and stuff anyway, so we're sort of used to doing that, and I don't think we'd ever really quit.
Sure.
No.
The developers of N++, Mayor and Reagan and Sean, I think it was just Mayor and Reagan actually, they call it jobbies, where it's your job and your hobby. You put them together, and it's a jobby. That's how they've gone about it, because they worked on N++ for, like 8 years or something like that. So they couldn't just sustain off of working on that. They've had to work jobs in the meantime. And speaking of which, N++, an incredible game. From what they've said, not selling as much as they would have expected, given how popular N+ was and N before it. And they're kind of confused. They're like, well, we didn't make a bad game. The reviews are good. But in terms of who is covering it and how many people bought it, they feel like the market has changed. This is what they've told me anyway. They feel like this is a sign that you can't just make like a good 2D platformer anymore, which then in turn makes me afraid for guys like you, that you're making an awesome 2D platformer but that for some reason, because of the market, it's more risky than it might have been.
Yeah, I guess it's because there's so much stuff coming out now. Like there's the indie game gold rush. Like there's a lot of games coming out at the time, and and obviously you're competing with the marketing engines of AAA games as well. So a lot of the press, like IGN in particular, like are going to cover the AAA stuff a lot more these days. And I felt this mostly because we ran a Kickstarter this time last year, and Destructoid was actually the only one to post about us. Like everyone else totally ignored our emails, and
really,
we didn't get any coverage at all, which I think is a lot of the reason why the Kickstarter failed. But luckily we got Rising Star at the end, so that worked out okay.
Well, that's good. Yeah, Rising Star noticed. Maybe because of Destructoid. Maybe we should be thanked. And then, of course, I can't review it because people will think I gave it a good score just because you said thank you in the game. That happens, People think that sometimes. It's wacky. But that brings me back to the point. What do you think it is about Poncho that might cause people to not understand what it's about right away? Or do you think that might be an issue or not for the game?
I think the best way to take this is like we'd go to like EGX or something, and there'd be people playing the game, like 4 people in a line, whatever, and people will be walking past, and they just walk past like, oh, it's just a platformer, and as soon as they're walking past, and they still got their eye on the screen as they're walking, and they're like, I'm walking past this. As soon as they see the shifting mechanic, they're like, oh wait, this seems a bit different, and they'll stay and watch, and then wait to play the game. Like I think, as long as people understand it is different. It's got a whole new way of sort of taking on the platforming genre. I hope people will see that, and that it's not just another platformer. There's a lot of sort of, I guess, things special to Poncho that, it's very personal, so I guess it's obviously all biased and everything. But like, there's a lot of weird stuff in Poncho, like little secrets and stuff.
Can you tell us about a secret? Or hint about one? Can you give us a secret hint?
There's a hidden. I can tell you, there's a hidden song in the game about a hamster, if you can find it.
Is it fully sung? Is it a vocal tune?
Yes, it's the only vocal tune in the game. It's sung by
Really?
Jack.
And Jack, you sang it too, Jack, about a hamster?
Yeah, I admit I sang a tune about hamster. Yeah.
It's a secret. You have to. It's hidden in the games. You can find it.
I absolutely have to find it. As for me, I'll give you a reflection because that's fun. My worry is that people won't see that Poncho is not simply a cute 2D platformer. There's this kind of history of mascot platformers that get by on kind of a surface level visual hook. In Poncho's case, he's got a poncho. Fez, he's got a fez. Arrow the acrobat was a acrobatic bat. Sonic the Hedgehog looks like he's running all the time because his hair goes back. They're a little, but at least with Sonic and Arrow the acrobat, there isn't a ton of depth beyond the fact that they're like cute cartoon guys. They're not living in a post-apocalyptic world filled with robots that are wondering if there's any meaning to existence and if they should go on, and if so, what direction they're going to go in. So people may not catch that about Poncho right away. I don't know if there's a way to do a trailer that says, like, you might get really depressed. Have you played Earthbound lately? Because it's kind of like that sometimes. You know, that sort of thing to let people know there's some grit and nihilistic existentialism to the story.
There's definitely a lot, and towards the end, there's a bit of asking the question like, is it better that humans are extinct? I don't know. It's going. I guess the story is slightly inspired by like a Ghibli film.
Oh
I was always thinking Princess Mononoke, just in that core theme of man versus nature. So like now that man's gone, nature's got a chance again. It's taken the earth over again. Like everything's all overgrown and lush, I would say. Like and there's a whole existential kind of question. Like you don't know who Poncho is or what he is. Like why is he? Because the story is, he wakes up in this lab, and he's, he is in like a dream or like a programmed dream that he has to go find his father, the maker, the guy who created him in this red tower, and maybe they can save humanity together. And you go out and you start meeting all these robots in the way that have their own kind of way of having a purpose in life and trying to figure out what they're doing. And maybe when you get there to the end, you have to sort of ask what's the right thing to do. Like, do you actually want to save humanity? There are multiple endings, so there are choices to be made.
Huh, cool. I don't know if people realize that either. The fact that, like you said earlier, you can start right to left, or like Metroid, you could go left to right and maybe discover something different. Knowing that there's multiple layers of depth, not only to how you play, but to the story, and you may only see the surface of the story the first time through. Yeah.
We're hoping that, I don't know, that it spreads maybe in like a cult fashion, like just how, in the same way that Earthbound did, like just how dark it is on, below the surface. But we've got a release trailer which is coming out closer to release that does address that a little bit.
Good.
So we're hoping that people will see it's not just a cute platformer, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah,
I think people who play the game will understand, but they have to buy it first. So that's the catch-22.
That is the catch-22. In this world, it's getting harder and harder to make something that people will give a try to, give at least a shot, so they find out if they like it or not. It used to be, it was like, well, everyone wants a new video game, so they'll try it. But if it's not actually good, then they'll tell their friends not to get it. Now it's more, how do you get them in the door? And then, of course, you also have to make something good on top of that, or else positive word of mouth isn't going to spread. So, I'm glad you've got Rising Star helping you, at least. They've been at this for a little while. They've published some stuff.
Yeah, they're probably best known for like Deadly Premonition and Cloud Built, I guess.
I suppose so. They've been, if I remember correctly, they've been publishing for longer than that, though. I remember.
Oh yeah, like I mean, in terms of like maybe more indie type games, but they've been doing a lot of most of their company in the past are doing like Japanese games over to the West,
Right.
kind of stuff. I think they've done a few Harvest Moon games and brought them over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, they've been really good, like especially in dealing with console people and stuff, like because they've got the contacts and stuff that we don't. And we were already signed up developers with them, and we had dev kits and stuff. But when they brought on board, like just communication was a lot more receptive with the console people, and they support us financially and everything. And they're really good in such a way that like they just let us get on with it. They're like, we'll handle the boring business stuff. You guys just do your thing and be creative, and we're not. They never say change this or anything, which is really good.
Oh, great. That makes me want them to somehow become as edgy and lovable as Devolver is. You've of course heard of Devolver. They're a publisher that, for whatever reason, they found a way to gain name recognition, and people will just buy a game for the fact that Devolver published it. That used to be kind of what publishers did. They earned a reputation amongst consumers, so people would just blindly buy whatever Square Enix or Nintendo or now Devolver does. And I'm sure Rising Star has their fans, but I wonder if Poncho will help them to kind of reestablish themselves as people who put out stuff.
I hope so. I mean, it's the first. I think it's the first multi-platform indie game they've published.
Really?
Like, I think that I can't quite remember, but I think the indie games they've so far published have been Steam only or PlayStation only or something like that.
Sure.
And we're planning to do this huge release on almost every platform.
When do you think? Is it
when?
coming? Yeah.
It's going through the approval process with the platform holders right now, and some platforms are done, like ready to go, but we want everything to come out at the same time. That's the ambition. So we're just waiting on the last couple of things, and we're hoping to set a date very, very soon. It will be. We'll definitely set a date in the next sort of month or so, and then it'll be very soon after that.
So you're hoping by the end of the year this year, then it's possible.
Yeah, well, definitely in fall, I would say, like before winter arrives.
Awesome. So in time for the holidays and the kind of increased awareness of video games in general. I can tell you, in case you didn't know, the video game blogs, E3 spike. After E3, where all of our numbers go down, and then start to arc back up as the holidays come in. So that's a good time to release, although there is a lot more competition around.
That's the thing. It's the blockbuster season. We're it's when Call of Duty or the latest GTA or whatever else, whatever franchises coming, they all come out around November usually.
Yeah, true.
So I don't know. Hopefully, when we release, we won't be in direct competition with some huge behemoth game. But we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Sure. I feel badly for Dan Marshall's The Swindle, a really neat game that just came out on the Wii U. Came out like the same day as Mario Maker. I looked to see how many reviews The Swindle had on the eShop because I bought it. It had one review. One person. I mean, I'm sure more people played it, but it's so scary. You don't control the rest of the industry. You don't know when someone's suddenly going to decide to release a thing on the same date you decided to release a thing.
It can be. It's like I know that there's a Mutant Mudds game on the way, like a new one.
Super Challenge, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's always the chance that will come out on the same day. I don't know what would happen then. There are some.
Have you spoken with Jules at
no, haven't spoken with them. Where are they based? Are they in America?
He's from the UK, but I believe he now lives in Texas. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know Jules super well. Every interaction I've ever had with him has been very pleasant. I'm always excited to see him because I like his games and he's very nice. I can't help but guess that he would be open to a Poncho Mutant Mudds crossover. There may not be time for that.
Maybe that could be a thing. I mean, I'm always open to crossovers and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've only really spoken that much to other developers, like when I meet them at like EGX and stuff. So I've met Rami and Mike Biffle and stuff briefly.
Cool. Yeah.
And they sort of gave a quick look at the game and a quick thumbs up.
Okay.
I mean, there's a thing like there's indie developers at these things, and then there's indie developers like those guys that they usually have a few people following around, like because they're sort of famous in the community and everything. So
Yeah, what do you
they're
make of
usually
that?
very busy.
You started in this. You and Jack started in this before there was any sort of like potential to be famous is a little strong, but within a certain subculture, like a well-known.
Within the gaming sort of
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you make of that? It was just a few days ago that Ron Gilbert, creator of Monkey
Yeah.
Island, who worked on Maniac Mansion and a lot of my favorite games, he was on
Yeah.
Twitter saying, if you're an introvert and you don't like to like dance and do wacky interviews with comedy, you're not going to make it in video games these days because people are making it based on personality, not necessarily on. Have you felt that way too?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. Like, I mean, my main focus is just to try and make good games, but like, I realize that I'll kind of be a guy representing the industry in a way, and my games, people judge my games based on me, like in a way. Like, Phil Fish is probably the biggest example of this. Like, there's a lot of people who said they hate Fez simply because he made it, that kind of thing. So that it can affect it. I mean, he was obviously a lot more prolific than other developers, but I don't know. I'm okay with having a little bit of renown. I don't want it to get to the level where there's like paparazzi following me around or anything. Not that I think that'll ever happen, but.
Well, you honestly never know. I mean, who would have guessed that Notch would end up having, whatever he has, 200 million followers, and people are writing stories on video game blogs, and I think the mainstream press too. He wrote that I'm feeling a little depressed today, and like CNBC.
Yeah, and they totally just took it out of context, and he tweeted again later like something about bad journalism or something, but like he was just, everyone feels down. Maybe he just, got up out the wrong side of the bed or whatever, and maybe he got up and there was no coffee. That can always ruin a day.
Oh, sure. It's biochemical.
Yeah.
It's antidepressant, that caffeine. You need it some days. But yeah, that could be you. You never friggin' know.
Everything I say gets analyzed.
Yeah. And Phil Fish, who you mentioned, who came up earlier in the conversation because of Fez, he has really retreated from the public eye whatsoever. I think he did help promote a game that's coming out kind of soon. But he actually, I mentioned this on a recent episode, he's no longer on speaking terms with me because Destructoid, I didn't write the post, but somebody else wrote a post that mentioned he's working on a game, and for him that was like, that's it. He said, I told you not to mention my name in the post, and you're fired forever. I was like, I didn't know that you didn't want me to mention your name at all in the post. I apologized. Not accepted. So he's totally run from the public eye. That's how much. Do you ever see yourself doing that? Like if people ended up forming hate mobs,
I think
hurting you. Yeah.
I think if I was getting 1,000 comments on anything I posted every day saying to kill myself, and they hacked my bank account or my website and stuff out of spite, like that would probably affect me, and I'd probably retreat. Maybe not entirely out of the industry, but I probably wouldn't make public appearances. I don't know. Like there's. It's like when you go online, people say, I'm going to bomb you at your next show or whatever, or I'm going to rape or whatever. Like, you always look at it and think, he's just a troll on the internet. But then there's, if after a while, there might be that little bit of you that's like, what if they're serious? Because there are some crazy people out there.
I think it was all of 3 weeks ago that two guys brought like shotguns and AK-47s to a Pokemon tournament, and like thank God the police caught them before they got in there. So yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
It was I think I found out
Pokemon tournament of all the things.
And they were like experts at Pokemon. They're like super good at the Pokemon card game. I watched interviews with them later, and they seemed like guys who just love Pokemon, no harm done, and then something happened.
Jesus.
So you never know. It is a scary world out there. But and to get slightly on a different track, before I forget, I did want to ask Jack, who's the creator of Poncho, the character. That's neat. Were you influenced by any other characters in the creation of Poncho, or was it just came out of nowhere? It just came out of your pencil?
I don't know. I don't think there's anything in particular. I knew that we wanted to make something that that could be used as an icon for people to recognize, and I think Poncho is very recognizable now as a character. He's quite simple. I mean, I knew I wanted to do a robot because at the time I didn't know if we wanted to do a boy or a girl. I mean, he ended up being a he, but at the time I thought maybe we should do something gender neutral. So a robot seemed to fit quite well. I don't know. It seemed to just. I did a sketch. I mean, he's gone through a couple of design phases. He's not how he was when I first drew him.
Sure.
But no, I mean, I just like cute pixel art. So.
But it does sound like as opposed to going for a Mega Man style Astro Boy robot whom conveys sort of a vague sense of humanity, or going for something more extravagant pixel art like Sparkster or one of those guys. You wanted neutrality. That's what I took from that.
Yeah.
You wanted like a blank slate feel, or at least that's how it sounds. Is that in fact what you were going for?
Yeah, it was. It was definitely a conscious decision after making him a robot that we could then use the robots in the world as a device to tell, a story about humanity. By taking humanity away, we can then sort of, supplant it with our own ideas of what we sort of think about certain things.
And do you think people will have an easier time relating with your characters because they are robots than if you had them filled with people, even vaguely realistic people? Do you think it's easier for them to identify with a robot that's just trying to figure out why it exists?
I think it's more compelling. I mean, you see in media, there's tons of films now about robots learning to be human, and I think it's something that touches a lot of people. Like, I mean, I'm just about to turn 25, and I'm still trying to figure out what it's like to be human. So I think it's something everyone thinks about, and the fact that robots are immortal. Well, technically they're immortal. It brings up a lot of questions, and I think it's important that we use these sort of devices to tell stories about ourselves, so that maybe we can evolve and grow as human beings.
Yeah, maybe. I was just saying, somebody, I can't remember the context, but they were saying there was a unessential or unimportant video game. Like, that video game, we don't need that. I think it was Rick and Morty, actually, a show that you guys have not seen. But it's a pretty neat show. You might like it. It gets into a lot of existential themes, while on the surface it's comedy. Underneath it's total tragedy, and like maybe everything is meaningless, and why bother with anybody? It's very bleak and fun. But anyhow, I was saying, oh, they'll probably make a video game of that. And somebody else said, we don't need a video game of that. And I responded, do we need any video game, really? Do we need them? Like, would we survive without them? Maybe we don't need them, but it sounds like you have the ambition to try to do something with a game that might actually progress somebody's thinking about their own existence, at least a little bit. And we don't need that to, like, breathe and eat and sleep, but it sure does make life better when you feel like you're contemplating something beyond just the essentials of survival, I suppose.
Yeah, I should also mention, like, I mean, Jack did design most of the main characters, but obviously our artist Matthew Weeks, like, really put his stamp on it as well. Like, and he designed a lot of the characters as well.
I feel like I know Matthew Weeks somehow.
He worked on, oh god, I forgot the name. Freedom Planet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom Planet's super cool. It's the like you were saying before, Golden Axe and classic Sega 16-bit games. Freedom Planet. I've never been a huge fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, but the fact that Freedom Planet is the closest thing to a Sonic the Hedgehog game I want to play, I'm going to buy it when it comes out on the Wii U any second now. Actually, you probably know this already. It came out on the Wii U. You could buy it, and then they took it off the store shelf in like 2 hours. So like 20 people have it right now, and I'm pretty jealous.
Yeah, there's something. There's some issue with the game that it somehow got through certification and everything with it anyway. But yeah, that's a real shame. I hope something like that doesn't happen with Poncho. And
yeah, scary.
Yeah.
So would you say the overarching feeling you have right now, because whenever you're anticipating something that's about to happen, that's important, it's either on the excitement side or the anxiety side, or somehow you can mix them together and make this
I think
weird
I'm
kind of anxiety
mostly
and
excited. I mean,
Yeah.
I am a little anxious. The main, I think, no matter what people think of it, I think I'm proud of what I've made. Like, I'm happy with what we've made together, and it's been, really, really difficult and really stressful just making it. But and I'm anxious just based on, as long as I hope it makes enough money for me to keep doing this and not have to go get a job. I think is the main thing. I've got lots of ideas, and I want to, start on those and not have to work on a iPhone Farmville clone, because that's what most jobs are here in the UK anyway. There's very few. I mean, most jobs in programming in general and games is to do with iPhone kind of freemium games these days. But yeah, I hope it's successful enough for us to carry on doing stuff. At least, I mean, we don't live on very much money anyway, so yeah, as long as it makes a little bit, we'll be okay. More than 5 though.
Sure,
More than 5
sure.
copies.
What if it ends up? What if you end up being rich? Then what'll you do?
I don't know. I don't know. I'll probably get a mortgage. I don't know.
Sure. Can you imagine a future where Poncho is so successful that you don't feel the pressure to make another game anytime soon because financially you're set? However, then Poncho becomes the next Minecraft, and everyone's expecting the next game to be amazing or better, or have a Star Wars preconceived notion of what Poncho 2 should be, and if it doesn't meet that, can you imagine that? Well, that would be like.
If that happened, I don't think I could ever stop working on games. I remember last Christmas, my girlfriend got annoyed with me because I never take days off. I pretty much work. There was a good year where I was working on Poncho pretty much 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I just couldn't spend time away from it because I was trying to make sure it was as good as I can possibly make it. And I said, all right, I'm taking a few days off at Christmas. And Christmas came around, and by the day after, I was literally going cold turkey. I was I was itching to get back, and it was like, no, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have a meal, and I'm like, no, I've got to do it. I'm sorry, I'm going crazy here. I don't think, even if I did have money and I was comfortable and everything, I think I'd always have to be making something. And I like what I can't remember what interview it was in, but Edmund McMillan said something about after the Super Meat Boy success, I think part of the reason he made Binding of Isaac the way it is and its controversy is he made it controversial because otherwise he'd be bored or something like that, and it somehow eggs him on to keep making it. And yeah, I can understand that as well. I've been thinking about making this game about homelessness.
Really?
Which might be the next thing. It'll be like a small roguelike survival sim kind of thing.
Huh. With you probably would you be doing the art for it, or would you?
We've probably going to use Matthew Weeks again. Do it kind of pixel art, way more abstract, a bit more crazy. I don't know. It's going to be my attempt at an art game, if that is a genre. But I thought I just want to make something small and crazy before I do my next big project.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird because we've got to the end of Poncho now, and I remember for the longest time I was thinking we need to spend a few years before we revisit this game again. We need to make other stuff because we've got other ideas and things. But now that we're at the end and it's pretty much very soon to come out, I thought I could do Poncho 2. Maybe I've got some ideas that I could put in there, and at the same time the other half of my brain's going, no, don't do it. Remember what happened last time? You barely slept.
But you've already got the engine now. Hopefully
it's all it would be a lot easier, I guess. Famous last words, but
sure.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. It's pretty much just depends on what we feel like making. I like having that freedom. That's probably the most important thing to me.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. So there was one game about homelessness that I don't think ever actually came out. It was supposed to come out on the Wii U. I'll have to go research what it was. All the graphics look like hand-drawn doodles on notepad paper with a pencil.
Oh, really?
And you were like a square going around in a world, and just like kind of everything sucks, and then you die.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll still come out. That was supposed to be
Maybe.
like 2 years ago.
I did
maybe
prototype the game at the home. I called it Change, and it was a Ludum Dare.
Oh, yeah?
Like a year ago or something. I try
cool.
to do Ludum Dare every time it's on, just to kind of take a break from whatever the main project is I'm working on.
Sure.
And yeah, that was pretty good. I did hear of this other game about homelessness. It was like done in like JRPG style. It reminded me a bit of Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh, really?
It's about a brother and sister, and he's trying to take care of his sister, and they're trying to survive on the streets or whatever.
Oh, sure. I'm a big Grave of the Fireflies aficionado. If I'm ever thinking maybe life has some purpose and that good wins over evil, I'll just watch Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah, just if you're ever walking towards the light too quickly, just watch that film.
Yeah, that and The Plague Dogs. Have you ever seen The Plague Dogs?
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's important that you watch it immediately. It was made in the UK, I believe. Yeah. Picture this. 2 dogs, very cute, drowning. They don't drown, but then they escape from a laboratory and slowly die, and then probably drown. The cartoon, Plague Dogs. You gotta watch it. Sorry, I'm way off track now. Jack, I wanted to hear from you as well about the thoughts you might have as Poncho is about to be released. Are you thinking, well, as long as people like the character and the music, I'm good, because everything else is their fault. I don't care. If this game isn't a success, I'm going to be heartbroken, or if it's a huge success and maybe too much. What kind of thoughts have you had?
I've been anxious about the release for a while. But I'm worrywart anyway, so.
Sure.
I don't know. I pretty much feel the same way as Dan. As long as I'm able to make creative things. I mean, I'm starting to learn how to program myself, and hopefully at some point I'll be able to make my own little cutesy games. But no, I need to make stuff. Otherwise, I'm sitting down watching TV, and it's like, I want to do something now.
Yeah. It sounds like in your 20s already.
Yeah,
You're deep in the focus, the phase of life where your focus is creating while you still can, and there is kind of a time limit on it. You're in your 20s now. If you get married and have a kid, it's very hard to make it about you and your own ambitions anymore. It's about what's going to keep this small, helpless thing alive. So you probably wouldn't be able to make games in your spare time at that point, but hopefully you will be able. Assuming you want to have kids. Do you guys like the idea of having kids? It's kind of neat.
I do. It's funny you say that, because Jack actually did get married while we were developing Poncho, and Matt now has also got a kid on the way while developing Poncho.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How has that changed? I can turn to Jack maybe. Did that change how you approached where your future is going with game development, getting married?
Well, not. I guess it might have changed the way some other people, but me and my wife have an understanding.
That's good. Best to have an understanding with your wife than a lack of understanding. That usually doesn't go well. You do have to, if you're going to partner with somebody in your life, they have to get that you do certain things that may not be, logical. They may not be the thing that's going to make the most sense financially, but it's who you are and it's where your passion is. I'm glad that she understands that. And dialing it back to Danny, are you still dating that girl, Danny? Who you?
Yeah, I've been with my girlfriend for it'll be 4 years in February. So.
Oh wow! So does she understand that when Christmas?
Yeah, she understands.
Around...
her understanding is that she's expecting engagement rings as the game is out.
Oh really?
Well, it's everyone's expecting us to at this point. And I like the idea of having kids as well. I mean, I obviously know that there'll be, it might put a strain on career stuff and creativity, but I'll still find a way. Like,
Sure.
I'm a workaholic anyway, so
Yeah, that helps. It's really about, at least I can speak for myself. My wife and I just had a son who will be 4 weeks old. I guess that's a month next Thursday. I'm still
Wow.
working on stuff all the time. Yeah, I know, time flies. I'm still working on stuff all the time. But once he becomes old enough to like want to go out and like do stuff, I'm gonna have to go out and like if I'm choosing between like making yet another thing, and I'll be in my 40s at that point. I've already
Yeah.
made a ton of stuff. Like, am I gonna make yet another thing that's for me, or am I gonna like help my son go out and learn about the world and make his own stuff?
Yeah.
I know where my choice is gonna be at that point. But if you guys are as successful as I hope that you are, and I think that you will be, you'll be able to clock in 8 to 10 hours a day, make your game, and then spend your time with your kids once you reach that point. So that
Yeah,
could be
that'd
good.
be the dream. As long as that's what I want most, is just to be able to keep doing this as my job, rather than have to get a job and then maybe think about doing this in my spare time. And
Sure.
if you got kids, that would be impossible.
Yeah, that would be, but it's going to be a little while for you and kids, probably. I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
it'll be a while. Like, I don't know. At the very least, maybe a couple of years from now. But like, yeah, it feels pretty good right now, anyway.
Right. I don't know if we talked enough about influences. I can't recall, and I know we got a few from Danny, 16-bit era. Was Earthbound an influence as well? Because that was, and I meant to say this to Jack, my first thought after playing a little bit of Poncho, breaking like through this is going to be a cute mascot platformer guess that I made, and seeing like, whoa, it's got a little bit of melancholy. It's got a little bit of it's willing to make me feel bad if it wants to. It immediately made me think of how in Earthbound, spoilers everybody for a 20-year-old game or whatever, towards the end of the game, you have to maybe give up your humanity and transfer your soul into a robot in order to be transported to a place where human life can't exist, but robots can. And at that point, you are truly a blank slate, and you're in this completely foreign world, and you're thinking, do I belong at all? Am I even alive anymore? I don't know. You have to look past those questions and move forward anyway into a complete unknown, and maybe do something worthwhile. Poncho gave me that feeling a lot of the time too. I was wondering if that was more a coincidence or whether there was any influence there.
I think it's probably more coincidence, but it's that sort of general theme that has always been sort of that driving thing for us story-wise, and trying to build a world that, I don't know, it seems very colourful and familiar, but it's also quite alien. So yeah, I guess it is coincidence, but it's very good coincidence.
Oh yeah, there's certainly worse things to be similar to than one of the most beloved JRPGs ever made. Neat game, though it didn't sell well at first. That brings me back again to this idea. What if it turns out that Poncho ends up being like Vincent van Gogh's paintings, and you guys are dying or long dead, and all of a sudden it gets discovered like 50 years later. People are like, Poncho's friggin' genius. I wonder if that would be acceptable to you, like if that's as good as it gets.
I don't know. I'd rather it makes enough for me to not have to get a job and live my life that way until I get to that point.
Sure. I wonder how expectations will change, because it's already an amazing thing that you've done. Like, how many people?
Oh, thanks.
The video. Yeah, it's a great game, and it's a successful game. It's going to exist. It's going to be played. It's going to be around for as long as the history of video games is around. As long as people are looking into what games have existed, they could stumble upon Poncho, and it'll always have a chance to suddenly become a huge thing. So you've already done it.
We can just stop now, Ben.
Yeah, we'll stop now. We'll sit and wait until death, and then that'll be the moment.
Everyone's different. Sometimes taking the pressure off like that frees people. But you guys strike me as two whom are able to feed off the pressure a little bit and have it drive you to do more than just watch TV in your off time. That sense of urgency that you've got to get something done helps you to move forward.
Yeah, I think so. We just have, I get this feeling like if I'm not making something, I'm worthless in a way.
Mm.
Like, so I have to be doing something. It's just part of me, and I know Jack feels the same way. If he's not, at least trying out some new music demos or something, like, we start to feel down in the dumps a bit.
Sure. And Poncho, if you're not moving forward and doing things, you feel a little bit like, what's the point? What am I? Am I really alive? I wonder if that comes into the development of the game, the theme of the game a little bit. It could have been.
Yeah.
Who knows? People can't help but make self-portraits a lot of the time. I've noticed.
Yeah.
People will say, "I'm going to go out. I'm going to make a clone of X, Y, or Z game," and something in them ends up leaking into it. Oftentimes, just the fact that they don't really care about video games, so they'll clone Super Meat Boy and just call it Meat Superboy, and it's clear they didn't actually care. So, but still, that's reflective of who they are and what they're passionate or not passionate about. Before I forget, Jack, musical influences. Any come off the top of the head? Games, specific composers, that sort of thing.
Well, straight off the bat, Nobuo Uematsu, who did all the Final Fantasy stuff, the most influential in my life, I think. I just grew up playing Final Fantasy, and those soundtracks are ingrained into my mind. They're so fantastic.
Sure.
But recently, only actually a few years ago, I actually started listening to a lot of indie game soundtracks, and a lot of those have been really inspirational. I mean, I remember listening to the Fez soundtrack for the first time, and it was like mind-blown sort of territory. It really was like a turning point in the way I write music. So
it did have a good soundtrack.
Yeah, sure does. That's a Disaster Piece, if I remember.
Yes.
Correctly. Rich Freeland, whose latest game, River City Ransom Underground, should be coming out kind of soon, maybe. We were all in a panic that it was going to get canceled because the rights to River City Ransom apparently... I don't know if you guys know this, or if you've heard of River City Ransom at all. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
No, I haven't.
It's a really, I'll tell you briefly for funsies. A game developed by the same company that made Double Dragon, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Renegade, but it was for the NES, at least the first one that came out outside of Japan, where you're just two weird high schoolers that decide to like beat up everybody in town. And when you punch them in the face, the enemies will yell "barf" for some reason. They don't actually barf; they just yell "barf." So you know they're thinking "barf" as they're being beaten to a pulp. Anyway, some guys got the rights to that. And Rich Freeland, Disaster Piece, is doing the music. But apparently the rights to River City Ransom, it's like you rent them. You don't like buy it and you get exclusive rights. Like I could pay them like $50 and make yet another River City Ransom game. Probably not $50, but
that sounds a lot like the Obsidian Fallout issue with Bethesda. Like they were doing that Fallout Online, and it's like you have the rights to use the name, but like literally nothing of the world lore or anything or something like that.
Right. Yeah. All the legal stuff is very convoluted.
Yeah, I can't remember if that ever got resolved or if it's still ongoing, but
yeah, me neither. And a name does mean so much. Like if you make a new River City Ransom game, some people like me, something's going to resonate right away, and I'm going to go buy it regardless. Or if it was the exact same game, but if it was just called hit the guy till he barfs or whatever, I'd be like, maybe. Which brings me to the question for both you, Danny and Jack. Are there any franchises you've always wished you could work on, that you have ideas for, that you'd want to grab the license for if you could?
Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy.
That's part of the reason I think me and Jack became friends, because we both realized we are both major fanboys of Final Fantasy VII. We can talk about it all day, because that was like for both of us when we got PS1 or whatever. That was like the first thing we played through, and it was like that was. But all games before that in my life were like, okay, you're this guy and you're running around, you get a high score, maybe beat this level or whatever. Sure. And then there's this, I put in this disc, and it's 3 discs. I think it's going to be a huge game, and it's an arcing story about, death and the end of the world, and I don't know, and life. I think it's the theme, and I don't know, and characters that die and make you cry, and it was just like something on a total level. And I was 7 when I started playing that. Like that really affected me. I cried like at least 7 times in that game.
Really?
Just a little kid. Yeah.
Again, spoilers for a 20-something-year-old game, or close to 20 years old.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy VII, for those who haven't played it, the first game for the series to be on the PlayStation 1, to have cutscenes, and they used that to kill characters more dramatically. Major character dies at the end of the first disc, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was the ending of the first disc.
Did you actually cry?
Oh yeah.
Where else do you cry?
I think I remember crying. There was a bit with Red 13 or Seto, and he sees his father. I think that bit made me cry. I was very young when I played the game, although I think for like 10 years after that, like some bits still made me tear up.
Yeah, sure,
like,
me too.
I know, I guess when you play, because I was so young, it took me like a year to play through the game, so I just play the same bits over and over again because I still didn't quite know how to play video games. But like, so I spent a lot of time with it, so it means a lot to me, I guess. And I'm feeling really anxious about the remake.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I was watching it live when they announced it. I was like, like every other person who did their reaction videos, where I was going no, and I had hands up here, and I was like, oh god.
Well, I think we've all known, at least I've always guessed, that Square Enix just needed to reach a certain like threshold of needing money before they would cash out that check. It's I think Capcom did something similar with some of their games. They waited until they really needed it, and then they cashed it out with some of their sequels. So yeah, I had a feeling it was coming. I don't think it'll ever replace the original Final Fantasy VII.
No, there's a lot of things. I know it's like, obviously the main battle system would be different, but like the things I'm more worried about is things like, obviously what's come up a lot in like the present stuff is the Honeybee Inn, where the prostitutes dress as bees and you get rubbed down and stuff like that, and you dress up as a woman, riding a dolphin, Cloud performing CPR on the friend of the dolphin, just Kate Sif in general. Like,
I forgot all about all that stuff. I forgot about the dolphin part anyway.
And I think there's another thing. There's like a little arcade game in the Gold Saucer, like the big arcade area. And there's this game you play for like half an hour trying to feed a nut to a Moogle.
I totally forgot
to make it learn how to fly. And you spend like half an hour, and it's just like, yeah, I got my 10 points to spend in the arcade by doing that. And it's like, it's just, some of the mini games don't make that much sense.
But hence is part of the charm. It's such a game of the era where video game logic and the capacity for storytelling, like you might see in a movie or a TV show, were fusing together. That Metal Gear Solid similar sign of the time games where they still hung on to the surrealism of video games while having elaborate cutscenes and deep storylines and whatnot.
Yeah.
We can never really go back to that. But they can never take the original Final Fantasy VII away from us either, so
no.
We'll be okay. I think we'll survive it. Jack, you mentioned Nobu being a huge influence on you in terms of music. Is it the same for game design? You mentioned you might want to do some game programming on your own, some design of your own. Is Final Fantasy one of the bigger influences, or are there more?
Yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy's always been a big influence, and Dan said it, we've both always wanted to make that big RPG sort of experience. But, I've never completed it, but I loved Ocarina of Time. And I love that sort of strange world where you're doing these weird arbitrary tasks for just to save the world. So I don't know. I like those sort of games. I like sort of puzzly games. So I'll probably end up making some sort of action puzzle games at some point.
Do you already have ideas for what you might do?
Yeah, I've got a couple ideas. They're not solid enough for me to talk about them yet, though.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know that feeling. Very exciting. And we have a few questions in, which is always nice. We haven't done them in a little bit, so thank you for asking questions, everybody. Salman Shh, who already reminds me of I wonder if that's a Salman Rushdie play joke he's doing. What was the most hilarious bug you've seen in Poncho, he asks.
I think the best one is they're these characters we call the glibs, and they're the ones that they're usually the ones that talk in the game as you walk past them, and they've got like a little cap on. They used to have no detection for when there was like a cliff edge, so they would just walk straight off it. And because they always say depressing stuff, it's like they'd basically just go, "There's no point," and then just walk off the edge, and some of my friends tried to urge me to keep that in the game, just make sure they kept killing themselves. It'll be funny, they said. But, that made me laugh.
Yeah, that does sound. It gives me a Marvin the Paranoid Android feel a little bit.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head. Yeah, which is a great book. Do you remember any bugs you like, Jack? It's okay if you didn't.
I remember that when Dan was porting over Unity from version 4 to 5, all the physics broke. So, in every scene, that all the characters were just rolling on the floor, rolling to their doom off the edge.
Yeah, so it was like, usually they're animated and it's just a sprite and it's animating and it sort of moves like this. But with the new physics I tried to put in, they were basically rolling, so they were the whole sprite was just rolling around. It was ridiculous.
Video game making, pretty fun.
Yeah.
These are things you get to see that, in the context of buying the game, if that stuff happened, it would express something pretty different. But in making it, you get to have fun with that, you lucky son of a bee. Nathan Rainey, who's making a video game, if this is the same Nathan Rainey, he goes by Rat Casket on Twitter. He's making a game called Kerfuffle that he's really critical of, but I think it looks great. The art is beautiful. Yeah. It's kind of a one-hit fighting game. It looks really neat. He asks, do you think there is starting to be a disinterest in pixel art? And I'm sure he's asking this with some personal investment, as his game, it doesn't look like NES-style pixel art, but it definitely is pixel art. And he goes on to ask, have you ever gotten a negative response from your game just because it is pixel art?
Yeah, I'll agree with it to some degree. I think there are, like, we've put up, like on our Steam Greenlight page or Kickstarter, whatever, there's always going to be those few comments like, oh, another pixel art game, can't indie games do anything else? And there's always this assumption, it's like, oh, another pixel art platform, we don't need another one of those. But at the same time, there's lots of people who are very enthusiastic about pixel art and they still like it. So there's always been people that don't like what you do and people that love what you do.
Sure.
I think, but there are certainly a lot of pixel art sort of, or at least a variant of pixel art kind of based games out there lately. But I guess what's important is that you just do the pixel art. Just do the art style that fits the game, no matter what anyone else thinks. I think.
Sure. And knowing that over the course of time, perception and feeling can change too, like I said before. But I do, my take on it anyway, is people, we have a loud generation of people who are kind of bored of video games, but they don't really know that. So they're like, I'm looking at this thing, and I'm not as excited about it as I might have been 2 years ago. That's probably because it's pixel art. So I guess I don't like pixel art, and then they type, stop making pixel art games, make, I don't know, I guess AAA, deep pockmark texture, high polygon count games, like just somehow do that. Yeah. I don't know. And they're probably bored of those games too. Those games are less exciting to people in general than they used to be as well. So there's a lot of, at least from what I've noticed, and maybe I'm projecting, there's a lot more people loudly announcing how bored they are with like every video game.
I think it's just the rise of trolls on the internet. Like, there's so many people that are so far on one side of you.
Sure. Like,
they'll just post the most horrendous stuff and comment horrible things that it's like, the people are just kind of like, yeah, I don't know, I've seen a lot of this stuff. Like, it becomes more okay for them to post negative things, even if they're not as bad.
Sure.
I think there's a bit of that in there. I know, but it kind of reminds me of, there was that video that Edmund McMillan did, mention him again, that was like, he did an impression of a guy who's just going, it's not as good as everyone says it is, or something. It was like ages ago. He was pretending to be a guy like on the online, just typing it up. It's not as good as everyone says it is. Braid isn't good.
And that, you should show us that Monstro toy you have in the corner. I don't know if toy is the right word.
Oh yeah, it's like a little figure.
Pretty awesome.
His website.
Was that pricey? Yeah.
I think it was like the equivalent of like $50. I'm not sure.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know, but I wanted it, and it was like limited thing. I don't think they're running them anymore. At least I'm not sure.
Awesome.
But, yeah, I'm a big fan of Binding of Isaac and Ed McMillan's work. So.
As am I. Binding of Isaac Afterbirth coming out October 30th. Very excited about that. See what, and that'll probably be the end of that for Isaac, but who knows with him. He keeps making stuff. Jack, do you have feelings about the pixel art malaise that seems to be happening? I don't think it's actually reflective of sales. I'm yet to hear anyone tell me, oh, looks like pixel art games aren't selling as well. But they are getting sometimes a more negative reaction in terms of people vocally deciding that it's a boring look or blah, blah, blah. Any thoughts on that, Jack?
I think it's been happening for a while now. I don't think it's just starting. I think, there are more ways than ever now for people that want to say something about a video game to actually put it out there. I mean, like Steam, fairly recently has Steam reviews now, so people, that's another avenue for people to either troll or put perhaps uninformed opinions on them. And Twitter and everything. I think, even like 5 years ago, it was sort of just on the forums and stuff, and now Twitter's so public and news. Look, the news media looks at Twitter now, so it's in the public eye all the time. So it's just, I think it's less that there's more hate for it, and there's just more ways for people to talk about their hate.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a great perspective to get. I appreciate it. I'm often like, as someone who's in the press or whatever, blogger, we have to make a choice a lot of the time, like how much are we going to give attention to, spotlight to this negative behavior that's going on the internet. People are simply trying to be destructive, trying to be hurtful, trying to make the world a little bit worse so they make them feel a little bit better in retrospect or in comparison. Should we give them any attention? I used to be of the opinion it doesn't really matter if we give them attention. Who cares? If we show our readers of Destructoid what's going on in the world and we're giving them a story they're interested in, then we're doing our job. But more and more lately, and what you're saying right now is reinforcing this thought, I think a lot of people are being jerks on the internet because they're hoping that some news outlet is going to pick it up and give them what for them is the closest they're going to ever have to fame. Similar to how in the United States, maybe in the UK as well, they have these talk shows where people just show up on a show and for 15 minutes they'll be like, I cheated on my girlfriend and I liked it. And they're like bragging about it, but for them it's like, this is the only thing I'm ever going to be famous for, is being awful. And I like being awful. So it's like, I get to express myself and be a jerk and be known for it. They may be doing it more because people like Destructoid or like the CNBC who's reading Twitter and posting about what Notch writes on Twitter, because they're publicizing it, giving it attention. Maybe we need to just completely ignore them. I don't know.
That's certainly what we've done. Like when we did the green light campaign in Kickstarter, there were people who put like 99% was all good stuff, like this looks cool, I'm gonna vote for this or whatever. But then there's always those few that are just like, I remember one saying, this looks awful, you should be ashamed of yourself, and people are saying go die or whatever. And I think the important thing is just do not reply to them. Like I remember looking at a few other green light games that they probably weren't going to get through green light because they were just they'd spent like a week on them or whatever it looked like, but they thought they could get through, and they'd put up this little video of their game and people would say go kill yourself or whatever, and he would reply, how dare you, and then what you get is the whole stream of comments replies, like they're just trying to start an argument. So I don't know.
I'm trying to relate. I mean, I know there was a time in my life when I might have been capable of that. I did prank call a friend of mine who I was very annoyed with because he spent his money on video games instead of paying me back for a video camera we rented to make a horror movie called Buford 2: The Return, about a killer rabbit that when it kills you, it leaves a skull covered in whipped cream because that's all we had for special effects. Anyway, he didn't pay me back, so I crank called him, and it was like the dumbest crank call ever. And I felt like I was hilarious and really like sticking it to him. Now, of course, I look at it and I think that was a complete waste of time and kind of an awful thing to do. That must be the mentality of these guys. I
don't know. I mean, that sounds like it was more of obviously more personal because you knew the guy and there was
a bit
actual.
Personal. Yeah, his
there was
older sister. I had a crush on his older sister, and she called me and was like, "I know it was you, and you should be ashamed of yourself." And I was like,
no.
"I am. I'm sorry." Yeah, and then we got along okay after that.
That's all good then.
Yeah.
But no, I think there's always going to be these people who just. I think there's a kind of maybe it is a slight prankster kind of feel to it. Like they just post it and they know the developer whatever's going to see it, and they feel a bit satisfied with that. That they might have made them feel a certain way and that they've got an effect on things themselves, but I just try not to engage with anything like that. I never want to. I mean, Phil Fish is something. At the very least, he's taught the industry a few good lessons about how to deal with trolls on the internet, and it's to ignore them.
Right.
Don't insult them back, whatever you do.
Yeah, he really. Phil. I never knew him that well, and I'll probably never talk to him again at this rate because he's still mad, I think, about the thing we did. But he is as I knew him, you play Fez and you feel one way, and you talk to Phil Fish, you feel pretty differently. He is very interesting to me. I was saying before that so often people make self-portraits with their games, and I know that Fez is reflective of how Phil wants to feel a lot of the time. But he's scared and angry, that guy. And rightfully so, with the world treating him the way that it has. And
yeah, I think
it's like back, and it really didn't make him feel much better. It seems like.
Yeah, I think it would certainly affect. I mean, it's like I say, I ignore these things, but if it was the torrent of hatred that he got, I might make some kind of statement in return eventually. Like it might tick me off that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it hasn't got that bad yet.
Yeah, hopefully it never will. I hope so for both of you gents. That the things remain relatively peaceful, and the worst you get is people telling you should be ashamed or something. But isn't that when somebody says something like that?
It's like they're not even saying your game's bad. They're acting like a disappointed parent. Like you'd rather they'd be angry with you.
And I have to guess that where they get that from is their parents are probably telling them that their parents are ashamed of them all the time, and they've learned.
Yeah.
Well, this is how you make people feel bad, and I want to be the one making someone else feel bad for a change, so I'll tell some random video game developer they should be ashamed.
Yeah.
Which, that's all I get from someone who does that.
It's next to be on my list of things to do, insult video game developers on their campaigns.
I guess you guys are doing something that other people don't get to do, and there's got to be some jealousy, envy element
Maybe.
as well. I'd have to guess. Well, geez. Looks like we're out of time already, and I didn't even get to. I was going to show you my Chibi Robo disc. I don't know why I was going to show it to you. It's kind of neat.
It's cool.
Yeah, it reminds me of Poncho a little bit. That was one of the things that drew me to Poncho.
It's the head, I think.
Reminds me of Chibi Robo, a relatively peaceful robot just trying to figure out what the meaning of life is and making people happy eventually. But sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's a pretty depressing game. It's got like divorce talk in it and stuff. I don't know if you played it.
I haven't played it, no.
Yeah,
I got a Wii U like 3 months ago for the first time, and I've got.
Oh, cool.
I've got like the basic games. So I've got Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, and I haven't had time to really dig into any games for a while. I'm not. Once Poncho is totally out of my hands, then I'm gonna have a big gaming binge week, I think, and just try and catch up.
As I've gotten to know you, Danny Hayes, I bet that week will be like 2 days. And then maybe it will happen, and you'll be prototyping and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it probably will be just like that.
Yeah, it's eventually when you retire and have kids, in between shaking them. Speaking of which, I did make a game in Mario Maker. I made a level, if you guys want to play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it turned out all right. It's pretty evil. I think only like 1.
I think that's the main goal of anyone who uses Mario Maker is to make a level that is evil.
And I was going to ask you this before, but I forgot. I didn't think it was that hard. Like I beat it pretty quickly, and I was like,
Poncho or
Well, when I made Mario Maker level, I was like,
Oh,
this
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
hard, but in fact, only 1.5% of people have played it and beat it. Did that happen to you guys too? Did you think, this isn't that hard? I think you might have mentioned it earlier that you didn't think it was as difficult than people have.
Yeah, we didn't think some levels were as difficult and that some levels were very difficult. It depends because players have different skill levels, but like we have had to balance things out quite a bit. It is still certainly the first like half of the game. It's fairly relaxed, but it ramps up very quickly once you get past the halfway point, and we imagine people throwing the controller down every now and then, but in a good way that they're frustrated and they want to get back to it to beat it. That's what we seem to see.
Just like game development. I'm sure you've had times where you wanted to throw it down and give up, but you went back to it.
There's been times where it's just like, I'm taking a day off. I need a day off.
That's good. I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that it worked, and the game is almost here. It's very exciting. It's going to be on Steam, PS4, PS Vita, and Wii U, Poncho. Where can they follow you guys on Twitter and other places?
So twitter.com/Poncho Game or @Poncho Game, and same on Facebook, just facebook.com/Poncho Game. We do updates like twice a week. Usually do videos and things. Hopefully going to be making our release date announcement very soon. We're pretty close to that right now. It's just a matter of time, really.
Exciting. Jack, you too? You can be followed on those places and those things?
Yeah, I'm at Jack_Odell on Twitter. And if you go to jackodell.com, that's my Bandcamp page as well. So.
Oh, cool. So people.
And I'm at Dan Hayes Gamer on Twitter.
Oh, very good. Yeah, you're in a lot of different places, you guys. As for me, I'm at Trawnuts on Twitter. You can watch the show later on YouTube, youtube.com/SupHolmesShow. 2 S's end up being next to each other when you spell that. That sometimes throws people off, but don't worry, you're spelling it right. And Libsyn and iTunes, you can listen to it later. That's the preferred way. People like the podcast version. Geez, almost, how many years have we been doing this? I think this is like episode 160 something.
Yeah, I think I remember. I think I was watching from the beginning. 5 years or so. I want to.
My goodness! Thank you so much. That means a lot to me, Danny. Thank you. We did it, guys. We did the show.
That's right. I love it.
Woo!
We're done.
That's all, everybody. Bye-bye.